We've been studying classical art since early in the ancient Mediterranean. We focused first on the Greeks. Here is an example of Myron's discus thrower. And then, of course, the Romans liked to copy the Greeks. And so we have here an image of Hadrian as a Greek god with his idealized body. And then, of course, we have the Renaissance, which was copying both the Greeks and the Romans. We have the killing of Medusa here with this idealized over the top muscular body. And so by the time we get to the 18th and 19th century, we once again have neoclassicism. And, as a person who teaches this year on end, sometimes I get a little bored of classicism, and sometimes maybe you do too. And so what I wanted to do was to have a little bit of fun with the next assignment. So what we're going to do is we're going to break up into groups and we're going to create a tableau vivant, which means living picture. So what we are going to do is come up with a subject matter. We're going to wear costumes. We're going to pose ourselves, and we're going to create works that either recreate a famous work of art. Here is a link on this presentation that you can go to and see this dance company who recreates all these Caravaggios. We're going to either do neoclassicism or romanticism. So we're going to force ourselves to only pick subject matter that can be considered to be neoclassical or romantic. And so here you can see I placed you in different groups. I intentionally made the neoclassical group a little bit bigger because normally in that one we need a little bit more people, but we can have everyone in the class be in both photos, and I'll show you examples of that. I should say we are going to be taking photos, so I'll show you an example as we move through. So how will we be assessed? We're going to be focusing on that our subject matter for our tableau vivant meets the requirements of either being neoclassical or romantic. And so we want to focus on the value tone, the subject matter, and the concept of the role of art, the technique, the composition, and then we'll also get some points for including props, costumes, and setting. We will do a little bit of reflection where each of us will describe the story. So it's really important that each person in the group understands what the story is and why we arranged ourselves in the way that we did to reflect the concept of either neoclassical or romantic art. So I'm going to have you on your own time, if you want to, look at this video. It is from a group called 70 Million Horses. They're a French group, but it's in English, and they go through a series of tableau vivants. Now, I edited the version because around 2 minutes they have a blackface, and I obviously didn't think that was appropriate, so I edited it out. So I made it private, but you should be able to view it because it said if you were from 203, you could watch it. So I would suggest we're watching this edited version. So for our theme for neoclassicism and romanticism, it is called Enlightenment and Revolution, Head versus Heart. So for the Enlightenment, this is the time, the age of reason. And so after the overindulgences of people like Louis XIV, the people wanted to get back to logic. And we have the rise of things like ethics, democracy, and capitalism starting to happen around the world. If you think about our own history, this is the time of the American Revolution in 1776, but there's a series of revolutions in France, one of them being in 1779 and in 1780 and 1781 and so on. So there is going to be a time where the people try to overpower the monarchy. And so for the head, so that part up at the top where it says head, right? The head is the neoclassical concepts. In this art, they value order, solemnness, it's calm and rational. I'm going to flip to our example here. You can see that the artwork takes on the subject matter of ancient Roman. This is actually from a play that people were watching during this time based on these brothers who basically sacrificed themselves for country, or for their city, I should say. So it has this sense of sacrifice and pride. And so you can see that they look like they are Roman. and you see Roman architecture in the background. So the subject matter for neoclassical is usually placed back in history. So that would be an appropriate subject matter for the neoclassical group, something Greek, something Roman, and dressing as if you were from that time period. When you look at the style, the art tends to have really clear-cut modeling. Now, this does have some rich colors, but a lot of times the colors are muted, or the color is not as important as we would see in romantic pieces. There tends to be a balance of vertical elements and horizontal. So notice how the father, his arms are in a diagonal. The blades are in a slight diagonal, but there's a sense of verticalness to the characters, even the arm as it goes across here. And then the works tend to be morally uplifting. So here's an example of our student works. We're going to make sure that we have all of these concepts in our art. Right now, the plan is to do green screen, and that's like the example you see here on the right. If that doesn't work out, if that's not going to be able to be arranged in the facilities that we have, we can also do a makeshift background that we'll spend some time in class creating. But we'll be responsible for bringing in our costumes and whatnot for everyone. Okay, the next part of the theme is from the heart, and this is Romanticism. In this style of art, the value is intuition, emotion, and imagination. They get a lot of their inspiration from medieval, Baroque, Middle Eastern, Far East, and nature. The tone is often subjective, spontaneous, nonconformist, and the subject matters can be from these periods that you see up here, but these are more like the characteristics of it. Instead, we have subject matters that are often contemporary events, so things that are currently happening, maybe legends or exotica, thinking of distant lands like the Middle East and the Far East and places of colonialism. Nature and acts of violence. The color is often unrestrained. It's very deep. You have a lot of Baroque lighting with strong light and shadow. Brushstroke is hard to show, but there's usually visible brushstroke, and the compositions often are dramatic, so they use the sense of diagonals. And so here by Jericho, you can see this composition pulls your eye up to the right corner. And this was based on a contemporary event of a ship that was going to Senegal was sinking. And so these are people who were trying to survive on the sea. So a contemporary event, right? So here's our example of Romanticism. So you can see here with the blue screen, if you notice, there's multiple characters that can be seen over and over again. That's the nice thing about technology, is that we can merge different photos together for this. You can see this one is still kind of classical in nature, but it does have more of a sense of drama. And then in this one is more like the slave ship, where we have a strong use of diagonals. Right now, there are some paintings that have characteristics of both. And so this is the Delacroix that's in the 250. It is based on contemporary events, but it also has classical elements to it. We're going to kind of stray away from trying to merge the two together because I want us to be able to understand the characteristics of the two styles. So what I'm going to have you do is to complete a brainstorm for tomorrow. It's worth 10 points. So you want to make sure that you include your part in it. So let me quickly show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go to the neoclassical one. So I put down the parameters at the top. So make sure that you read these again. When it comes to subject matter, you can recreate a famous work of art, but it doesn't have to be. You could just find a subject matter that also would be appropriate. There's nothing wrong with that. And sometimes it's nice to be original. And you want to make sure that in the directions here, you go underneath, there is a diagram. So in this diagram, what we're going to do is we are going to place our concept. So you're going to explain your story, and then feel free to insert an image to help explain that concept. So you can go ahead and illustrate it. So you can see we're all filling out the same sheet here, right? So we're going to do part one. And then as a group in class, hopefully on Tuesday, we'll do a little bit of brainstorming. We'll figure out which one we want to do so we can have a conversation and decide which of your ideas we use. And then we'll write in anything else that we need to know. Okay, so the romantic one looks pretty much the same, right? But it has the romantic tendencies to it. Feel free to email me if you have any questions.